Well, normally I would say good afternoon, but I know we have a little bit of an international crowd here this afternoon, so it might be good morning or good evening as well. So let's just go with greetings and salutations, everyone. Welcome to the Schulich School of Engineering's information session on the Master of Engineering in Geomatics Engineering. My name is Joe McFarland. I'm the Media Relations and Communications Specialist here at Schulich, and it is my honor and privilege to be here as the moderator and MC for today's session. The format for today is pretty straightforward. We'll start with a short presentation on geomatics engineering here at the U Calgary, a panel then on a day in the life of a geomatics engineer. It's going to be a great panel. Talk a little bit about some of the fun stuff, also some of the inspiring stuff. Have a little bit of fun with things. And then we'll have some additional information about living and studying at the U of C, and we'll have some program details, that kind of thing as well. And then we're going to save the best for last, the best, of course, being questions from you. So if you have some that come up throughout the course of today's presentation, you can use the Zoom webinar Q&A function at the bottom of the screen, type in your questions, submit it, and we'll get to them. We may answer them via text throughout the course of the presentation, but we will absolutely do it for audio and video purposes as well. So that is how today's format is going to work. Before we get there in the formal presentation part, I would like to take an opportunity here to acknowledge the traditional territories of the people of the Treaty 7 region here in southern Alberta. The city of Calgary is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. With that being said, let's get into the formal presentation now. And as I mentioned, we're going to start off with a short presentation, a bit of a slideshow, and from a couple of people who are very well knowledgeable in geomatics engineering. We're going to start off. He is the department head and professor in the Department of Geomatics Engineering with a research focus on mapping, flood modeling, moving object tracking and databases, and geospatial web applications, just to name a few. Emmanuel Stefanakis is here. Also, professor in geomatics engineering, graduate program director in the Master of Engineering in Geomatics Engineering. Research focuses in geodetic networks, geophysics, oceanography, surveys, gravity, field modeling, basically just trying to put every word imaginable that I can't pronounce properly for some reason on this Thursday. Michael Sedaris is here as well. So Emmanuel and Michael, take it away.
Thank you, Joey. So welcome, everyone. This is a session to advertise our Master of Engineering program in Geomatics Engineering. So a few words about the department. The department was founded in 1979, something like 40 years ago. And that time, it was founded to meet the mapping and surveying needs in Western Canada. It is the only department west of Ontario. So since 1979, lots of things have happened actually, and the department has followed and actually led the rapid evolutions in geomatics technologies to become one of the most renowned geomatics research and teaching centers in Canada and the world. So if you can please move to the next slide. Yeah, so it is a global leader. The department is and our faculty members are global leaders in research in all the geomatics technologies. So this you can see them here. Our graduate students are working with us to actually keep up and in the evolution of this exciting discipline. Next, please. Well, so why to take a master's degree in geomatics engineering? So I will leave this question to our panelists that will follow my brief presentation here. Next, please. Well, so the program is pretty flexible. Graduate students registered in the Master of Engineering can either be full-time students or part-time students. It is a course-based program, and the program consists of 10 graduate and undergraduate courses. And the idea is that students, depending on your pace, you can complete this program within 8 months to 2 years. So there is also an accelerated option available, and there is no need for you to find a supervisor. You just apply to the program, and then you can get admission depending on your credentials. So the graduate work is we usually try to keep to collaborate with industry and government so that, as I said before, we are trying to actually move forward and lead the evolution of the geomatics technologies. So the courses, very exciting topics like sensor, web, and Internet of Things, geospatial data science, advanced physical geography, geodesy, Earth observation and for the environment, and many more. So the focus areas of our program are actually, there are 4 areas actually we can see here. The digital imaging systems, geodesy, remote sensing, and Earth observation, positioning, navigation, and wireless location, and GIS science and land tenure. So what we are inviting not only students who have graduated from geomatics engineering program, but also students with bachelor's degree in sciences, geography, computer science, or other engineering disciplines. So there is also an accelerated, we call it 4+1 program. The idea is that if you are a student in your final year for the bachelor's degree at the University of Calgary, in either engineering or sciences, you can work with, we can work with you, and we can advise you to take a few courses during your final year of your bachelor's degree, up to 3 courses. So this will actually give you the opportunity to complete the MEng program, the Master of Engineering program, within 2 or 3 terms after graduation from the bachelor's degree. So please, if you are interested, contact us. So what industries will you work in if you graduate with a master's degree in a Master of Engineering in Geomatics Engineering? So this is hard to tell, hard to exclude any, because as you know, geomatics is the science and practice of location. So all applications actually nowadays need to know where we are, where we are moving to. So here is a list of different industries that you can work in after graduation: navigation, aerospace industry, survey and mapping, resource exploration, and many more. So the panelists that will follow this short presentation will actually delve into this and give you much more insight. Thank you so much for listening.
Well, thank you, Emmanuel, as well for that presentation. My apologies as well. I didn't realize that Michael hadn't joined us yet. One of the lovely things about being in the Zoom environment is you don't necessarily know who may or may not be on the call at that particular point. And when you have these kinds of things in person, a lot easier to tell. All right. With that being said, again, thank you, Emmanuel, for that. Let us jump right into the panel discussion. And I'll first off introduce you to our panelists, all 4 of them. We'll start off. He's a professor in the Department of Geomatics Engineering. He's a Canada Research Chair in Geomatics Multi-Sensor Systems with a research focus in navigation systems. So GPS, smartphones, mobile mapping, sensors for navigation, and pipeline integrity monitoring. Nasser El-Shimi is here from overseas. He's one of the people who happens to be, it's 1 o'clock in the morning apparently there. So thank you, Nasser, for for either pulling an all-nighter or having a little bit of a nap before coming on to be one of our panelists today. Also joining us this afternoon, graduated from Geomatics Engineering in 2011, Strategic Marketing Manager, Geospatial Field Solutions at Trimble. I believe she's working in Colorado actually right now, working in GIS survey and emerging markets. Stephanie Michaud is joining us for the panel discussion this afternoon. Also joining us this afternoon, an alumnus of the MEng in Geomatics Engineering, graduated in 2019, data scientist involved in inline screening to identify pipeline performances and safety issues. Randy Ho is going to be a part of our panel discussion this afternoon. And last but certainly not least, a PhD in Geomatics Engineering in 2002, the 2020 Schulich Entrepreneurship Alumni Award recipient. That's a mouthful all on its own. Recognized for founding a geomatics engineering startup called Sarpi Limited. Before his time, he was developing and using geomatics engineering applications for land surveying, environmental monitoring, and high precision measurement. He's also branch manager of Calgary Engineering for McElhenney Limited. Robert Radovanovich. I knew I was going to get that one wrong, but I picked it up there. Sorry about that, Robert. Robert, Randy, Stephanie, Nasser, thank you all so much for being part of today's panel. So let's get into the questions. And I love this question right off the bat because I feel like a lot of students who are coming to the school or thinking about coming to the school may not have someone who comes from that same walk of life. And I think all of you have a different story to tell. So let's start off with this. And we'll start off with Nasser right off the bat here. When did you realize that you wanted to become involved with geomatics engineering?
Wow, this is a long time ago. I think Emmanuel mentioned that the department was established in 79, so almost 42 years. I have spent almost 30 years of them within the department. So up from the beginning, almost 10 years after the department has been established, I came as a graduate student. I came from, after doing my master's in Holland, I received almost 30 different offers of scholarships to study for my PhD in Europe, in US, Australia, you name it. And after, doing my own due diligence, I choose the University of Calgary because I realized that I'm going to a department that will lead, the geomatics world. And at that time, it was called surveying engineering. We realized very early that surveying is just a very narrow to what we can do as a department, and they led the world in changing the name to geomatics. So I did the right choice to join the department. I went to industry for after I graduated for a few years, but then I came back because I want to make a difference by teaching the next generation of leaders in geomatics. And if you give me the time, I can just give you lots of names that work in Apple, Google, Samsung, you name it, the leaders of the world. And automotive industries, our graduates actually leads most of the navigation system development in General Motors and Honda, and I can give you a list that I will take. I need too much time for that.
Well, and one of those might be actually Trimble, and that's where we'll go next. Stephanie, tell us a little bit about your journey here and how you ended up getting into geomatics engineering.
Yeah, so for me, actually, I don't think geomatics was my first choice. I chose to come to Calgary specifically because I wanted to have a new city all to my own. I'm originally from BC, and so I felt like Vancouver was a place I'd been before many times, have family there, and I wanted to start kind of like my own chapter in life in Calgary, and U of C was a good fit for me, and they had so many different degree streams. And after first year, I went into the geomatics program, and I wasn't quite sure what it was. I really enjoyed and was interested in like aerospace applications, and I didn't really understand how geomatics could play into it, but I figured I would at least give it my second year to see before I looked at transferring. And within my second year, learning about all the different technology, I realized it was so much more than just aerospace applications. There's just on the ground and geography related, and then we get into location-based services, and then all of a sudden the iPhone comes out with a GPS sensor embedded, and it was like, I can't leave now. There's too many exciting things going on here in this department. So yes, I always like to say geomatics chose me, and it knew I was right for the industry before I was. But that's kind of my story.
That is fantastic. Randy, same kind of story for you. Did you fall in love with it right off the bat, or was it something that you had to kind of lean into it a little bit? Tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, so I actually came from a background in geophysics, so I did my bachelor's at the University of Calgary. And during our time there, fourth year, we have something called field school, where we got to experience doing some geophysics surveys. And it was basically the first time I've ever touched a GNSS receiver. And I was just like, what is this thing? I've never learned about this thing in my life. But we used it out in the field, and I was just like, latitude, longitude, geospatial, I'm interested. And at the time we were also taking gravity and magnetics courses, and I was like, coordinate systems, geodesy, seems like a cool place to go towards and do a little bit more research about. So that led me into finding geomatics a little bit, looking at all the courses that were available, and that was my fit, I guess. I ended up deciding that was my way to go.
It's fantastic. Again, I'm a big fan of, if you truly love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. Robert, are you in that boat as well?
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting. My background's a little bit different in that I had a family background in the land surveying profession. So I was kind of interested in the whole field early on. And really, the University of Calgary is kind of your standard stop for folks who want to get into the land surveying business and become professional land surveyors. However, it was really interesting because then coming on board, I remember in first year engineering and starting to learn actually about the kind of the whole breadth and depth of what actually goes on in the geomatics engineering field was really quite remarkable. And, you know, it's just kind of wild how much more there is and how there's just an infinite variety of kind of careers that you can take in that. So it sucked me in, and that was that.
So next question, or next kind of where we go with path next, is what kind of inspires all of you to do the work that you do? And this time around, let's start with Stephanie on this one.
Sure. So I'm calling in, talking to you all from Colorado, and I've worked here for 10 years since I graduated from U of C. And one of the things that I love so much about working for Trimble, but also in the geomatics profession, is how global it is. I work with teams on a daily basis that are based in Germany, in Colorado, and New Zealand, and then I serve customers worldwide. And so no day is ever really the same for me. I'm constantly learning what our customers are doing, whether it be land surveyors or municipalities mobile scanning their cities with thousands and thousands of data points. You know, I'm constantly understanding what they're trying to do with geospatial data. And that inspires me to continue to push my own personal knowledge, but also to create better products that serve them. And especially when it comes to in more emerging market scenarios, I've had the opportunity to be involved in projects where I've really been able to affect how, say, someone is able to determine their property boundaries and own land, right? So being able to be involved in projects like that is incredibly rewarding and allows you to feel like you're making a difference in the world.
Randy, you're fairly new at this. Stephanie says she's graduated about a decade ago. You graduated a couple of years ago. So you're still fresh in this game. What's keeping you going?
Honestly, for me, it's that every day is different and new challenges and problems arise pretty much daily. So basically, for like every new problem that we sort of discover, there's a new outlook or a new environment that I'm in. And solving these problems is basically where my passion is at. Not only because that solving the problems these are problems that we have globally, but it has a direct impact on all sorts of people, industries, and fields. So it's everything that we do on a day-to-day basis changes, and there's so much to learn every day. And what we do is really rewarding with basically everyone globally.
Robert, I noticed you were nodding along alongside both Randy and Stephanie there. You've been at the game a little bit longer than both of them, but obviously still pretty impressed with what you get to do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and in particular, like what I really enjoy is the education I got in geomatics engineering at the U of C. You really don't appreciate how broad of a base it provides. So what I like is that every day I get to wake up and there's some weird, odd problem that no one else can seem to solve. But you know, it seems that I've got a great background in things like measurement science, data analytics, computer programming, all types of stuff like that. So I basically get to draw out of my bag of tricks every day to try to solve something new.
And Nasser, finally to you, you kind of get to see both sides of this, right? You get to see not only the research side of it, but you also get to see the education side of it. Talk to us a little bit about that, being able to see sort of the light bulb go on for the students, but also the light bulb going on for you as well.
Oh, thank you. I think, I enjoy very much seeing, people graduate from our department and leading and working in companies. I enjoy very much actually meeting them, in conferences where I learn from them that what we taught them is just, change their life, it change their, career. I enjoy also seeing some of them like Robert, starting their own companies and promoting it and making it larger, and then, taking to the next level. So there is lots of excitement working within the department, meeting new faces every year, taking their hands step by step, trying to teach them, what is geomatics, and then coming back. Maybe some of them come back to do graduate studies and PhD, then we learn back from them. As I mentioned, my first, introductory a few minutes, that we have lots of graduate students from the department, not only working but leading actually, major areas in big companies. Like for example, the GNSS architect of of Apple is from our department. The lead of the location-based services of Samsung is also from our department. So these people, when I meet them in conferences specifically or business meetings, or I enjoy talking to them because also I learn from them, which is really very, enjoyable to know that the people that you teach can also teach you later.
I'm kind of curious. I want to follow up on that for just a second because I know Little Birdie's just told me that you're an entrepreneur as well. And so does that kind of get the creative juices flowing just a little bit when you realize that, hey, there's a little bit of a, I don't want to call it a competition, but certainly there's that added advantage of, hey, I got to kind of almost one up you.
Yeah, I mean, this is another topic it can take long time to talk about it. But also, I enjoy taking ideas, with my students and realize it and make it a product, and then try to commercialize it. And I think this department has been very successful in that. I can just give you, 5 examples at the top of my head. The first mobile mapping, or let's say call it Google Street View like system, came from this department. The first 3D virtual mapping came from this department that has been acquired by Microsoft. The first indoor navigation that I was part of it as one of my companies has been acquired by also a giant in the US for indoor navigation. So there is lots of good examples. The first GNSS receiver software that's being used in many applications also came from this department. So I think we're not only active in education, but the department also is very, very famous for its research and commercialization as well.
It's kind of interesting. Before we started this session, the group of us were all kind of together in a room off stage almost. And Robert said to Stephanie, "Oh, you're working in Colorado. Do you know this person?" And Stephanie said, "Yeah, of course." And they knew this common person, and it kind of reinforced where I want to go with the next question, which is about relationships. And I'm going to start with Randy here because you're kind of the new one at the game here, but at the same time, getting to know somebody like Nasser, getting to know some of these people, how important are those relationships that you've learned through the course of this, being able to develop those friendships, relationships with not just your teachers and your research fellow researchers, but also people from across the globe, kind of thing?
Honestly, it's been amazing. I mean, I had Dr. Alchemy as one of my professors during my time, but just relationships in general are important. I think we bounce ideas off of each other. We all learn from each other. We're not really like battling each other about this. It's a global problem. We're all trying to work together on a solution. So making friends, building relationships, all important for just everything that we do.
Robert, being in the industry as long as you have, how important is it to not burn bridges? And I feel like granted, I've been graduated from college myself for about 15, 20 years now, but I learned over that time that You never ever burn any bridges because the industry is so small. Talk about that side of it from what you see on a day-to-day basis.
Oh man, I don't know if I'm the guy to talk to about not burning bridges. My track record's undeniably mixed. But in all seriousness, yeah, like the cool thing about Geomatics is that it's a small group. There's a number of different technical specializations and kind of career paths, but ultimately, we're not talking millions of people in the field. We're talking thousands of people, maybe tens of thousands of people in the field. So reputation is really important, right? You gotta deliver on what you say. It's a lot of trust based, and the cool thing is, you know, thanks to our really strong alumni network, you can pick up the phone and call people, and it's amazing as to how you bump into people and people know people, and yeah, reputation is everything.
Nasser, is that something that you try to teach your students as well? As yeah, you can be the smartest kid in the class, but if you're not willing to work with others, you might not necessarily get that far.
100%. Actually, we teach them through even within some of the courses how to work together first, right? The 500 or what we call the graduation project, where they work together and they try some of them they try to secure a project with industry so that they can learn also work in industry during their career. So absolutely, even the very early courses that and Rob and Stephanie and Randy can also comment on that. The first course they take in coming from third year is a summer course in Kanaskas, where they build relationship among each other, which is really very, very nice course, the survey camp. So absolutely, and I echo what Rob mentioned. We are not millions, but we're a very connected community. I think I know almost everybody working in geomatics in Calgary. I would say even not as in a friend level, but at least I know their names. I know what they are doing. And needless to say that I know almost most of our graduate students, where they're working in general, which is great for the department.
And Stephanie, you kind of alluded to it in a previous answer about the networking side of things, because you're working with people from across the world kind of thing, and building those relationships is so integral in what you do on a day-to-day basis, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I have the privilege of working for a company that manufactures products for geospatial professionals. And so people like Robert are my customer as well as an alumni. And so, I understand being able to call, different alumni up and ask for their honest opinion, and also to be able to discuss, how does this meet your expectations for the work you're doing is really valuable. But on another note, I also really enjoy, we hire interns and full-time hires from the Geomatics program every year. And as an alumni, I really take pride in every year we have strong candidates coming to work for Trimble, and it makes me proud to know that the program is still delivering top quality people into industry and to other companies as well. And I love seeing being able to speak with the different professors and help support them, and what are the industry skills that are required for graduates so that they are as qualified as they can be for coming into the workforce. And it's great to have that working relationship. So I also kind of, as Nasser is saying, feel like I know a lot of the graduates, even though I haven't been at the university in person in a long time. I still know the students coming out and coming into the workforce.
Very cool. Just a quick reminder for everybody who's happening to tune into this live is we do have the Q&A function. So if you have any questions for any of our panelists, any of the people who have presented so far today, by all means, just type in your question and we'll get to that at the end of today's program. On that note, next question kind of dives into more of the day-to-day things. I'm going to start with Robert on this one. Has anything taken you by surprise from the time that you got your PhD, for example, in 2002 to today? Is there anything that's really kind of made you go, oh, I wasn't expecting that?
Yeah, I would say one of the things that I did not foresee was how ubiquitous geomatics technology was going to become. And I mean, from a consumer perspective, when I was doing my undergrad and graduate studies, things like airplanes that can fly themselves were like, wow, that'd be cool, wouldn't it? And now for $500, everyone's got a drone. And like, fundamentally, a drone is 100% geomatics technology, right? It's a GPS receiver and sensors and navigation systems. And you can go to Walmart and pick these things up. Positions just become such an integral part of our society now. And that just blows me away.
It's got to be kind of one of the fun things, though, at the same time, too. I think it was Stephanie's point earlier on is every day is so different. And so you're kind of having to adjust. And I know it's been the most overused term throughout the pandemic has been you kind of learn how to pivot really quickly, don't you?
Well, yeah, you certainly do. And, constant improvement and study and like keeping on top of development's critical to staying fresh in this career. But again, like, I remember us as undergrads, and it's, maybe some days a little frightening that so much infrastructure is based on a bunch of 20-year-olds that were running around campus.
I Your sense of ha is just getting me every time. Nasser, from someone again who sees not just the business side of it, but also the student side of it, I assume that you come across surprises probably on a day-to-day basis, don't you?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that really I'm proud of is again seeing graduates from our department leading, major departments in big companies in tier ones and major semiconductors. This is something that it make you wow when you see someone that you taught a course is using that in something that I'm using back. Like for example, some of the people that developed in GM or Hyundai the navigation systems from our department, which I when I drive, I just remember them, that these guys that I taught 20 years ago are the ones that developed something that I'm using right now. So I echo what Robert mentioned, that nobody can imagine 20 years ago that we'll see GPS receiver and smartphones, right? That we are using continuously in searching for everything we want to do in our day-to-day life activities. No one can imagine, that in few years from now that cars will drive themselves, right? And every component in an autonomous car will be relying on some of the principles that we teach in geomatics, whether it's using a camera to detect an object in front of the camera of the car, using laser scanners to detect objects, static or kinematic, using sensors to track car underground and in urban center and so on. So these are all, I wouldn't call it surprises, but it's actually, game changer for our life.
It's amazing to me is how quickly it changed, because 20 years isn't that long, 10 years isn't that long, and yet the technology has swung so hard that it begs that interesting question in the back of my mind is, what are we going to be talking about in 2031? Right. And so to go to Stephanie here on this one is, you graduate 10 years ago. Could you have imagined being at this point now? And what kinds of twists and turns did you come across during your journey?
Yeah, there's some actually there's two really interesting ones. So the first one being, so I focused on GNSS positioning navigation coming out of the program, and I ended up working for a couple years in our agriculture division. I don't have an agriculture background. I've never driven a tractor in my life, but I was able to bring to that group a lot of understanding of our technology in order to improve our precision farming applications. And so it was really incredible for me to immediately, like out of school, be able to bring my knowledge and apply it to an industry I had not a lot of like domain experience, in the sense of like having not really worked on a commercial farm like that. And so that was really amazing for me, and not something I would have pictured myself in working in that industry for a couple of years. And after that, the second point is that, and this ties into like what Robert was saying around, the program really gives you a strong foundation. So I took a land tenure course, which I thought I would never use again. But, I went and worked in our land administration division helping install and set up cadastral and GNSS infrastructure for cadastral surveying work. And, I was constantly thinking back to some of the discussions that I had in that course. And again, another thing I didn't think I would have ever worked in if you had asked me when I was an undergrad, but those were things that, have surprised me, and I continue to rely and fall back on the foundation I learned in my program.
Interesting. Randy, as a recent grad, how much do you lean on some of those, whether it's Nasser, Robert, Stephanie, others who've gone through a much longer journey and go, okay, I get it. Like, this is going to have to be sort of an ever-changing, ever-evolving kind of line of work?
Well, I think everyone has ideas, and there's just an endless stream of ideas from everyone, and from my other panelists, and from everyone you meet in geomatics. And I think that's probably one of the most interesting things about this journey, or just in geomatics engineering in general, is it's just an endless stream. I thought I'd be doing like a cookie cutter, like few problems that I'd be stuck on for a while, but then sometimes you're just at like the grocery store and you're like, oh, maybe I could use this from geomatics. Like I could maybe do some indoor positioning and figure out like how things work in a store and customer traffic and stuff like that. Or there's just a bunch of like different ideas, and every day you'll just go through your day-to-day life and you'll be like, this is something new. Maybe we try this. And you could just ask anyone you wanted to and be like, your old relationships, your old professors and stuff, and bounce ideas off them as well. So I think everything changes based off of, each other and industry need, I guess. So
As someone who is a recent grad, how excited are you about the future, because you see how much growth there's been in the last 10 years, last 5 years?
I think it's a little like sometimes overwhelming because there's just so much out there. And, you think that it'd just be like a few things that you're going to be working on, but there's just so much you could go into. There's so many job titles. Your career can branch off into many different things. Like Stephanie said, she did a bunch of different things at Trimble, and she never really expected it. So I think just having that opportunity and uncertainty is kind of nice, actually, though a little bit stressful.
I can only imagine. Next kind of line of question. We talked a lot about the positives in what goes into geomatics, but I want to talk a little bit about some of the challenges as well. And we'll start with Nasser on this one. What are some of the biggest challenges you've faced over the course of your career?
Wow. I think when we start, for example, new research project, right? Setting the end goal tends to prove that's not always correct, in the sense that you set a scope that's small. It's actually at the end of the project you end up with something really very, very large. And I can give you just a couple of examples. One of which is my first company that I started off is called Trusted Positioning. We started with one PhD working on location determination from sensors inside the phone. And but after that we find out that's not only about the location, it's about the application itself. And we kept developing till we realized that this is really a game changer for indoor navigation. And it took us a few years to grow the company from 3 people to 30 people. And at that time only we realized that we have something big, and we went after big companies. So this is I wouldn't call it's a nice challenge, a good challenge. Another one was related to actually also flying drones indoor. We started with a very small project, just trying to develop our own methodology for how to control UAV for indoor applications, for indoor navigation, and without really looking at the application. And once we did that, we realized that actually the big picture is to look for, developing an app on top of it, for example, for sniffing chemical leakage, for example, inside building, or for risking finding a location for a firefighter inside the building, injured firefighter. So these are all, good challenges, but at the same time, my point is never really limit your, thinking. You know, it's you can start with something small, but by the time you develop it, you realize it's actually much larger than you imagine, which is a good challenge, I would say.
Kind of sounds like challenges lead to opportunities almost. And
Absolutely.
Stephanie, I assume that's probably in your case as well. You kind of look at some of those challenges that you face on a day-to-day basis and go, you know what, that's an opportunity here.
Yeah, definitely. There's been scenarios where I think whether it's other competitors or just no one has taken the time to really like dig into those challenges to solve them. I see that as a huge opportunity, and part of the reason like I worked for a while in like our business development group, I was just fascinated with like where are there new opportunities for us, or those challenges that maybe they're not the easiest thing, but they're an essential part of success for our particular customer in that region of the world, right? And maybe a little bit broader too for me coming, like I said, I'm 10 years into working in the workforce, but challenges for me personally have been like as a young person working for a big global company, it's easy to feel like a little bit intimidated by like, oh, maybe I don't know what I'm doing. Maybe I won't ask that question, right? But I've had some opportunities where I have spoken up and asked the questions, and that have actually resulted in filing a patent because somebody hadn't thought about it before. So like there sometimes you can overcoming that challenge and having the confidence to kind of speak up leads to opportunities, just like Nasser said.
Randy, we'll go to you here on this one. Any challenges or big challenges you've seen so far?
I think the biggest challenge for me right now is that not everything you try or experiment with will actually give you the result that you want. So working to really find what works best in sort of for that current problem or for that current environment, still the biggest challenge on my day-to-day basis. But it's also the most rewarding thing when you actually come up with a solution that works for that environment or for that problem, right? So I think that will probably be my biggest challenge going forward and continually as we go on, I guess.
Absolutely. Robert, what's the toughest part of your day?
Well, I have to say the interesting part is balancing bleeding edge from early adopter. And, we're living in such an age of digital transformation and disruption, models of working, technology, everything's changing. And so to stay relevant and to actually succeed as a business, you undoubtedly have to be an early adopter of technology, techniques, new ways of doing things. But there's a really fine line between early adopter and bleeding edge alpha tester that sinks a pile of money, as Randy said, into something that is not the result you expected, which is often bad. So you gotta take risks. You've got to try new things, otherwise you're going to become antiquated and obsolete. But like at the same time, what's kind of exciting and terrifying is having to balance that risk profile and make sure that you're making the right decisions and seeing where the trends are actually coming from.
I assume that fear of failure kind of goes away after a while, doesn't it?
It really depends on how big your mortgage is.
Well played. Well played. Just a quick reminder as well, we do have that Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. If you want to ask any of our panelists or any of the presenters, any of the questions, we'll get to that in just a short little while here. I just have a couple more questions, and then we're going to get to the next portion of the presentation here. And the next question actually has to do with those prospective students who might be watching, who might be listening in now, and the job prospects. Obviously, we're in the midst of a pandemic. There's a lot of question marks over every industry, it seems like now. And I want to start with Nasser, because you're the one who's speaking to these students, and you're speaking to alumni who are kind of giving you a bit of an inner edge on what the world's like. And you're also an entrepreneur in that realm. What are you telling kids? What are you telling prospective, not just students, but also possible employees?
The fact that geomatics is actually being used in many of our day-to-day life activities is actually serving many industries that we cannot, we don't know even. Sometimes we use technology that we don't realize that's really made by geomatics engineers. So from the example that you mentioned about the COVID, I think the COVID actually has showed that geomatics technologies or geomatics applications are really very, very important. For example, to keep people at a social distancing, right? How do you know actually that you are at 2 meters away from someone, right? For example, I witnessed some of the applications that have been developed in China to track people for the sake of, again, for their safety, to know they went to which restaurant, they went to which supermarket, which bus they ride, which car, actually, when they take their car and try to move from point A to point B. These are all very important information, of course, given I would call it the safety of people. It opens lots of opportunity for geomatics engineers. Everything around us is moving, and in order to track all this movement, you need geomatics engineers. So life will never stop, and I believe that geomatics applications and the need for geomatics specialists will never stop as well. I just saw one question, if you don't mind. I saw someone asking about how important is coding in geomatics. I think I can leave that for the rest of the panelists, but I can I can answer this question that coding is very, very important. I think those who work in some of my graduates that work in Apple or work in big companies, they work there because they know two things. They have a background that nobody else have, which is dealing with data, location data in general, but also how to implement it. If you want to work in industry, they will not wait for you to tell them what to do. No, they want you to do it, right? So at least if at a certain level, and then you can leave it for the experts in programming. So programming is definitely very important in our program, and we teach students very well programming in our curriculum.
Stephanie, we'll head over to you. What are you seeing on the job market now?
Well, so, I mean, I think geomatics students have such a great skill set to come into industry and apply to such a broader range of industries now, not just working purely for like a manufacturer like myself. And I work remotely with people all the time. So I was giving the example of like my team in New Zealand. So, I'm responsible for them. And, normally I work with them over a Zoom call just like this, right? So even with the pandemic, sure, I'm not traveling to that office and they're not coming to Colorado, but I mean, it's still business as usual for working over the phone like this. We also have new employees that we've onboarded remotely, and sure, it means that we have to ship equipment kind of around or, spend a little bit more time and care to make sure that everyone gets that kind of feel and understands like the culture and the community of the team that they're working in. But it's totally possible, and we are moving ahead with that. I mean, geomatics really serves so many essential industries that are becoming more and more important as a result of the pandemic. So, I would say that our industries are not stopping, right? And geomatics is, if anything, becoming more relevant as we try and be more productive with people who are working distanced, or, we can have less people on site. So you need technology in order to facilitate that.
Randy, I want to ask about the MEng program a little bit, and what has that provided for you as you've gone into the real world?
To me, honestly, the MEng allowed me to sort of discover and explore geomatics engineering in general. I mean, I kind of, at the time, I specialized in geodesy, remote sensing, and Earth observation. But I took courses throughout the entire program. So I took GNSS and 9S and stuff like that. And honestly, I could just choose whichever courses I wanted to choose and what I was most interested in. And I didn't end up working really in remote sensing or satellite navigation, really. I actually work as a data scientist and leverage sort of IMU data. But that's kind of the nice thing, is that you don't really focus on one thing. You're really, you get the opportunity to explore all the courses if you like, or if you really wanted to focus on the one, then you can, but you have that option to be as open as possible with what you're learning.
And finally, Robert, we'll let you have the final word on this. When it comes to the job market out there, when it comes to the education that's provided at Calgary through Schulich and through the MEng, what are you seeing? What are you hearing out on the streets?
Well, I think the interesting thing is, obviously, we all have a lot of concerns about the local economy in Alberta, more broadly in Western Canada. And that's a concern. I can really empathize with grads coming out of university this year, in next year, last year, looking at a really, depressed local economy. However, as we mentioned before, and I find it really cool that we kind of have consensus on this. The almost the point of a geomatics education is that you're a generalist in a wide variety of very useful transferable skills, right? We've spoken about coding, data analytics, surveying, all of these things that can be applied all around the world. So if you're willing to be flexible, and now that we're working remotely, if you're willing to really be flexible in terms of which opportunities you're seeking, I feel that this is a really great start for anyone starting off on their career.
Fantastic stuff. So for the panel, you get a little bit of a break. You guys can go grab a water or coffee or whatever you need here on this Thursday afternoon, or in Nasser's case, it's Friday morning, I believe. So again, thank you for that. We'll come back to the panel in a couple of minutes and dive into some of the questions I've seen on that Q&A. Again, if you go to the bottom of the screen, there's that Q&A. You can ask some questions. Some have been answered already via the typing, but we'll answer those in video form as well in just a couple of minutes. In the meantime, I'd like to introduce you to Jamie Olmstead, who is our graduate program advisor for the MEng graduate program. Going to walk us through some more of what you can expect here at UCalgary.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jamie. We're just going to get the slides up here, and I will go through everything with you guys. Our first slide here is why should you choose the University of Calgary? Our panelists went over a lot of good topics regarding this, so we'll go through the next couple slides, but definitely their information provided was great. Our school is very entrepreneurial minded, so we right now at the school have over 3,500 undergrad students. We have over 1,400 grad students. Our faculty is ever growing. It continues to grow, but currently we have 170. We are a very research-based school. So a lot of our faculty are out there in industry, trying to get research dollars to better facilitate the school, which also creates great opportunities for us to have strong ties in industry. This slide is in regards to Calgary, because Calgary is a great place to live. It's one of the only places that has sunshine almost all year round. So it is one of the most livable cities in North America. It is also one of the fastest growing. So Calgary and the surrounding areas continue to grow and grow. It's one of the most beautiful cities. And it has the highest concentration of high-tech workers of any Canadian city. If you are coming to attend the University of Calgary, we have one of the highest quality of education. So our tuition fees continue to be one of the lowest. There's many advancing technologies that we have through the University of Calgary, and it continues to grow each year. Next slide, please. So this slide touches on our career success. So a lot of our engineers are able to get jobs right out of university. We have one of the fastest growing tech talent markets. And we also have highly educated engineers that go into industry and are able to make successful networking opportunities. We also do offer a transformative talent program, which is essentially a program that our engineering students would be able to take in their second year of studies. This would be through different avenues of industry partners, and they would need to have approvals from their graduate department, but they are able to work with industry in the transformative talent program. The University of Calgary is in the top 200 of universities worldwide. We have 169 research chairs and ongoing and always updating new inventions and innovations all the way back to 2017. Right now on campus, we have over 32,000 students. Our campus is beautiful. There are parks throughout, walking paths. There is also international work experience that you can take outside of the actual campus. and study abroad programs. So living on campus. Recently, we have just built a new residence. So this is the Crow's Nest Hall. You will see that down in the basement, there is a Starbucks, so you can go right downstairs to get your coffee. There's brand new study rooms, as well as community kitchen in this building. Also a little bit off campus, not too far, just a quick walk. There is actually a family residence services. So there is townhomes there for students that come to Canada who have to bring their families, so that their families are able to live on campus with them. So the cost of living in Calgary. We do get a lot of questions in regards to this. The two links that you see below there are a way of calculating the cost of living when you do come to Calgary. If you want to take down those links there, you can put in the information that you're looking to get the cost on, and you can use these links to evaluate how much it may cost to live in Canada. We do have many different services through the University of Calgary. One really important one is our International Student Services Center. They have their own website, as well as immigration advisors to help international students when they're coming here, before they're coming here, to answer any questions related to study permit or visa. They have a welcome center, and we also have a career services center for all of our students. I'm just going to review kind of our MEng deadlines. So typically the deadlines are admitted on a rolling offer basis. So we do have deadlines for each program. However, we do state to keep in mind that these are ongoing all the time. So for our September 1, 2021 dates, we have April 15th is the final application submission date. However, we do say to submit as soon as possible because we are admitting on that rolling offer basis. And once we do admit all qualified applications and applicants, we will close that portal. So you will no longer be able to apply to the program. If you are applying, you will need to have a bachelor's degree that is at least 4 years long. We will be calculating your last 2 years of study or last 20 courses without splitting semester, and it must be 60 units. You must have a minimum of at least a 3.0 GPA out of 4. And our final official transcripts will only be requested of you once you've been admitted. So for your online application, you will only have to upload unofficial transcripts for the evaluation period. I'll touch on our tuition. So for MEng course-based students, you are assessed per course. So the link in our slide here will take you directly to the tuition link. So you will be paying per course. So depending on how many you decide to take per term, will determine your course fee, as well as general fees that will be assessed each term. You can pay this in bulk, which you can pay a year ahead of time, or you can pay per term for these general fees assessed. The tuition that is paid at the beginning of each term will not include your cost of books. So this may be additional when you do start your courses. I touched on this a little bit on the previous slides, but as I said, we will use unofficial transcripts to evaluate your application. So the official documents won't be requested of you until you've been admitted. So your offer will be stated that you will be conditional upon receiving these final official documents. This is the health and dental program. So our students are all offered a health and dental program as part of their graduate program. You may have the option to opt out of this if you have previous existing care, but this is offered, and it is mandatory if you do not have previous health and dental services. Our international students that do not hold a permanent residency or citizenship in Canada, you will need to provide an update to us if you do change your status. So when you are applying to the program and you are an international student, make sure that you do indicate that you are on a study permit and not permanent resident. Sometimes we do get some issues with applications where a student applies as permanent resident. However, they are meaning that they're permanent resident of their country. So when we do ask this question, we are meaning what you will be when you come to Canada. So essentially you would be on a study permit, and that's how you would apply. These are our English language requirements. So we do accept the TOEFL and IELTS, as well as PET. Temporarily, we are accepting a Duolingo test till the end of this year. So we will accept it for the fall 2021 term. Right now, this is currently only in place for the current pandemic situation. However, if going forward, this is an accepted test, it will be written in our graduate calendar, and we will update our websites. In regards to any documents that are in your foreign language, they will need to be translated. So if you are sending official transcripts to us that are in your foreign language, they will need to be officially translated by a translator. Once they have been translated, that translator needs to put them back in the envelope and seal the envelope with their stamp. Because these documents need to be received to us in signed sealed envelopes, they have to make sure that both the English translation as well as the foreign language transcript is both in the sealed document and received to us. This is how we determine that they are official credentials from your institution. And we are at the end. Wow, that went by pretty quickly. So now we are going to get to the Q&A session of our presentation.
Thank you so much, Jamie, for that. And I'll remind everybody that if you have questions along those lines down the line, about anything that Jamie has addressed, you can email meng@ucalgary.ca. That's MEng@ucalgary.ca. All right, we are going to invite our panelists back onto the screen. We're going to answer a few of the questions that have come up. And of course, as mentioned, if you have a few more that you'd like to ask, by all means, there's the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and you can type it in. And there's been some answers already, but we want to verbalize some of them as well for those who might be watching this after the fact. And I know it was Nasser, I believe, who answered this question originally and then said, yeah, we'll leave it up to the others to answer as well afterwards. And so we'll get to that right now. And the question was from Pedro, who says, how important is coding in geomatics? We've heard what Nasser had to say. Stephanie, what are your thoughts on that question?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's, I mean, especially if you're working on the product development side, I think coding is a foundational skill and really important for understanding how all these technologies come together. I personally have not used coding in the last 5 years because I've been working more on a management marketing side. But the fact that I have learned those skills allows me to communicate with my team in a really effective way, so that when someone's explaining why our deadlines are long or something's overly complicated or not possible, I at least have like that baseline understanding of why that might be. So yeah, very important. And the program that's set up through the Geomatics program does give you a solid foundation in programming, which I think is really important, even though it might be challenging at the time when you're in it. That was definitely my experience.
I suppose knowledge is power in that regard, right? You may not need it down the line, but it's nice to have.
Definitely. And depending on which role that you're working into, I mean, it can evolve over time. I definitely was more reliant on that knowledge at the start of my career, and now it's more of like a nice to have.
Randy, anything else you want to add to that?
No, I agree with both of them. I think that coding is sort of necessary for a general sense. You will probably need more expertise if you're going into sort of the software dev or the product dev side of things. But I think just having the general baseline for processing and for analyzing and just in general makes things much, much easier.
Robert, how about coding to you?
Yeah, I would say that geomatics engineers and computer scientists tend to be somewhat frenemies. And I can definitely say that having, started businesses that involve developing software and hiring computer programmers and such, the foundational knowledge that geomatics engineers get in coding, while we don't end up typically being hardcore programmers, arms deep into lines of code, the fact that we understand the basis of how software is developed and the logic associated in the process really makes it super valuable when you have to deal with a multidisciplinary team that involves coders.
The next question that comes up from Habib, and this was directed right at Stephanie, but I have some follow-ups that I think I can ask the rest of the panel. Habib asked, hey, Stephanie, how did you find yourself in the ag sector coming out of school?
Yeah, so it was really a lucky circumstance, really. So I started at my company doing a rotation program where I spent 6 months in 4 different divisions at the company. And so I happened to have agriculture was a predetermined role because it's a big sector at my company. So I worked there for 6 months. I really was interested. I saw that I was immediately able to add value. And so after I finished the other rotations I had, I decided to take a longer, more permanent role with that group. So it was totally like by chance that I happened to have a rotation in that group and that my company had an agriculture division.
Nasser, when you talk to students or you talk to potential employees down the line, is that something that you kind of try to make sure that they are aware of? Is that, again, we talk about the pivot idea, but even beyond that is talking about that idea that you may not end up in the line of work that you kind of envisioned when you first started this program?
100%, and I think the reason is again the industry is very dynamic these days. You know, I give a couple of examples. Nobody thought that cars will drive themselves in the next few years, right? So what we learn, what we teach our students right now is fundamental, but at the same time, it's not the end of the game. They have to, you know, they will face some challenges in trying to apply that and take it to the next level. So absolutely, you know, I always tell also my graduate students, which is another level beyond the bachelor, is that the industry outside is just moving continuously. You know, you have to update yourself with knowledge beyond what you learn in school. Stephanie mentioned about agriculture, right? The role geomatics play a very important role in automation of the precision or the agriculture sector, but also for many other industries as well.
Robert, so far you're where you thought you'd be when you first started the program, or did you end up changing trajectories as well?
I think I change trajectories pretty much every 4 years, it seems these days. And again, I attribute that really to sort of the wide variety of skills you get out of a geomatics program. You know, when I started, you know, nowadays, I manage a multidisciplinary group of engineers, environmentalists, landscape architects, surveyors. You know, we deliver civil infrastructure projects. 5 years ago, I was soldering together instrument sensors to build measurement devices. 5 years before that, I was building software to allow 3D visualization of data sets. Once I found a submerged bulldozer in a poisonous tailings pond. Like, you're just doing all different things all the time.
And Randy, how about you?
For me, I guess since I'm relatively new, I did have to do my own, I guess, pivot in industry because I decided to sort of take on more of a role that was outside of my specialization. I just found everything that I learned in geomatics was interesting. And I mean, they gave us the background information and knowledge to really apply for those jobs and do well in those jobs. So I moved from a remote sensing background to just a data scientist background working with sensors and MEMS devices. So I think the possibility of pivoting is always out there.
Absolutely. It looks like we got one more final question for the panel, and it was answered by Robert via text as well. And I want the rest of, I'll get Robert to answer this first, is what do you think is the difference between someone who has a master's and is in the workforce and someone who doesn't have a master's and is in the workforce?
Yeah, I thought that was a really interesting question. And ultimately, I really think that kind of a master's acts as a bit of a force multiplier on industrial experience, right? So, you know, certainly, you know, if we're going to be honest, is a new master's student have as much deep knowledge as someone who's practiced for 25 years in a technical field? No, but on the flip side, given equal experience and equal sort of length of tenure, certainly a master's really demonstrates that a person had a commitment to developing a deeper basin of knowledge, and that lasts with you an awful long time.
Stephanie, would you like to add anything on that one?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Peksha, for your question. I think that it's really, I totally agree with Robert for sure. I think it's a great way to go if you are already if you already see within your organization, whether through your experience or through your own personal interest, if you're looking for a master's degree to further specialize, that really gives you just that acumen of skill set to then go deeper and have a more advanced or technical role in that specific aspect of the job, right? But I think what a master's degree can be a really great catalyst for is if you're trying to change jobs or pivot into a new industry or into a new workplace function, right? So for me, like, you know, I don't have a master's degree, but now having worked in industry for 10 years, I can better look on like the experience that I've had and where would I want to then pivot. I work in management now. So maybe for me, doing some financial or leadership type work or strategic marketing is a better fit for me. Whereas coming out of undergrad, I would have had no idea, right? So likewise, as Randy was articulating, I think it's a great way to make that pivot and facilitate so you're qualified for that.
Randy, when you look at things, do you feel like you're armed and dangerous, so to speak, when it comes to getting into the workforce and really making a difference?
Yeah, I think the master's program really puts you into a more specific detail and into the nitty gritty of all the things we learn in sort of the undergrad. I think one of the biggest things it's taught me is to stay curious and question the normal. Because I guess when you're just doing sort of your regular thing all the time, you're getting used to just doing that. And that master's degree really puts you into that thinking of, I now have all this extra knowledge and I can start to expand out on what I previously was doing. So I think it definitely gave me this sort of like the toolbox to really move forward.
Give the final word to Nasser on this panel. And I want to expand upon the idea of pivoting, but even just going from job to job, but also up the ladder in that sense. Is there a professional development, leadership, project management component that comes along with the MEng?
Absolutely, yeah. But I want to add something, of course, just before I try to answer this one. Having a master, whether it's an MEng or Master of Science or you name it, definitely opened the door for, for different job, for geomatics. If you are seeking, for example, R&D or development or designs and so on, I think masters will give you expertise beyond what you gain in your bachelor, unless of course you have 5 years, 10 years experience in industry. I'm very biased in this area. I mean, my first company has, as I mentioned, 30. All of them have minimum master or PhD. So again, you find that with the master, the breadth and the depth of the knowledge that you gain in a specific area is really can make a difference for the graduates to find a job in a certain company. There is so many companies actually around the world, including, for example, Trimble, and Stephanie can correct me about that. They have a development team, just sitting the whole 24/7 thinking about new ideas and how to improve product and how to improve productivity and so on. This cannot come easily without having a degree beyond the bachelor degree. So part of the MEng is that you have the flexibility to learn beyond technical. So for example, you can have professional development. We have usually a graduate course for any graduate students in the department. It's professional development, how to represent, how to write a document, how to write a proposal, how to think, on the spot about questions and so on. So these are all things that are very, important for careers and for differentiating yourself from others.
Perfect. Again, thank you all so much for taking part in this. To Nasser, to Stephanie, Randy, and Robert, thank you so much for taking part in this. To Emmanuel and Jamie, thanks so much for your presentations as well. And again, thank you to everyone who decided to spend a little bit of time on your Thursday afternoon or Friday morning, whatever time it might be in your neck of the woods. And again, if you'd like to contact us, you want a little bit more information, that kind of thing, you can email us at meng@ucalgary.ca. It's MEng@ucalgary.ca. Again, giant thank you to one and all for taking part in today's information session. Have yourselves a wonderful rest of your day.